co-edited. We're here together with some of our amazing contributors from the book. Before we start, I'd just like to welcome everybody and share three very simple and basic Zoom etiquette things about these co-edited. We're here together with some of our amazing contributors from the book. Before we start, I'd just like to welcome everybody and share three very simple and basic Zoom etiquette things about these co-edited. We're here to fix that one, sorry. It's going to be full of technical problems. That's the deal with all the live things that we do. Anyway, so please mute yourself when you join. We'd love to have your cameras open so we can see your faces during this event. We would love to have you use your pronouns in your Zoom name, so you can simply edit your name and add them if you feel like it. Feel free to use the chat throughout the event. We'll be trying to gather as many questions as we can for the Q&A towards the tail end of the event. And I think that's the three main things that we'd want to ask from you. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Francesco. He's going to be telling us a little bit about the event that hosts us, the Carnival of Crisis. So Francesco, hi.
Yes, hi everyone and welcome. Actually, we may wait a few minutes more because I know that many more people have registered. But briefly as well, maybe I would welcome you on behalf of University of the Arts London, where I'm based, which is hosting us because this event is part of the Carnival of Crisis Festival. As you know, the UK this year is hosting the COP26 in Glasgow, and University of the Arts London has organized a festival in response to that. And so it aims to demonstrate how art and design can and must respond to the climate and the ecological emergency. And the power of creative climate action is demonstrated through a season of events taking place in parallel to the COP26 UN Climate Summit. And this festival is organized by the UAL Climate Emergency Network, and it brings together a diverse community of students, alumni, and staff along a global network of arts, universities, partners, and the wider public. There are talks like today, workshops, exhibitions, and actions, and they are open to everybody to attend, mostly online, but also we have some in-person events. Like yesterday, we had the Carnival of Crisis parade for climate justice at UAL. Maybe also it's worthwhile introducing ourselves, Spiros. So I am Francesco Mazzarella, and I am a senior lecturer in fashion and design for social change at London College of Fashion, which is based at UAL. My work focuses on fashion activism and design for social change. And as well, through my work, I've often very much focused on crafting situated services. Spiros, over to you.
Hi, yes, sorry, that's the nerves of a live presentation. I'm Spiros Boufilatos. I'm an adjunct lecturer at the University of the Aegean. My work is centered around craft, sustainability, and tacit knowledge, mostly tacit knowledge. I've been working a lot with trying to find new ways of doing research through design in the context of sustainability as a way to try and understand how values are embodied in the design process, and how these values, especially the ones that are associated with sustainability, can help us better transition towards a sustainable society, which I think it's part of what COP26 and this whole ongoing conversation has been about.
And so today we want to explore how can we craft new social economies and mobilize creative action in an age of emergency. And for this as well, this event is also hosted by DESIS. And for this, we'd like to welcome Teresa Franqueira, who is the DESIS International Coordinator. So very briefly, maybe we can look at the schedule for today. So we will have a brief welcome from Teresa. Then me and Spiros will present the book, Design for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and also touch upon its main themes. And then we will have a keynote provocation from Cynthia Lawson-Yaramillo. And then there will be a panel discussion amongst the different project leads from the DESIS network. We will then make sense of this project in the light of the current crisis, and we will welcome you all to contribute to a Q&A. And finally, we will launch a design challenge for the DESIS student movement. So Teresa, over to you.
Hi everyone. I will try to share my screen. I think you are seeing now. Yeah. Yes.
Let's try.
Yes. Now, yes.
Okay. Perfect. So, hi everyone. First of all, let me just congratulate Spiros and Francesco for this great initiative. I will briefly introduce the DESIS network that I think most of you are familiar with. So for those who are not familiar, DESIS stands for Design for Social Innovation and Sustainability, and it's a network of design-led research labs based in universities around the world and created to trigger and support social change towards sustainability. And okay, so the network has been getting bigger and bigger, which is great news. So right now we have 55 labs in the 5 continents, and I think we are counting. The DESIS labs are the most important, I will say, the stars of the network. The projects that have been developed by all the DESIS labs are really interesting. We are trying to update our website to also update the projects that DESIS labs have been developing. We have some activities. The network is really active with some events as the one that Spiros and Francesco are launching today. One of the activities that we created during this year was the DESIS Cafe. So every 2 months, a DESIS lab can host a DESIS Cafe and share in an informal way their activities, their projects, their difficulties. So I will take this opportunity to inform you that we will have our 5th DESIS Cafe on the 17th of November, hosted by the Northumbria University DESIS Lab. If you want, and if you didn't have the opportunity to join us during these cafes, you can go to the DESIS YouTube channel, and you can see all of them. Also, we've been present in several conferences. Cumulus is an association which we are partners, and we have an interesting event in Rome. Also, you can see on YouTube. And we have launched this initiative, the Conversations for the Planet, which will take place twice a year. The first one was in very interesting discussion between Ezio Manzini and Beatrice Gisclar about the post-catastrophic condition and the role of social innovation on that. Also, we still have our parallel activities like the philosophy DESIS talk, and also this fantastic initiative, the DESIS students. They will launch their 2nd design challenge on the 18th of November. I think Ingrid at the end of this event will talk more about this. But please, if you are a DESIS lab, just promote this among your students so we can have as much students as possible. So I wish you all a very great event today. Unfortunately, I I can't be till the end of the event. I will have to leave in 15 minutes. So thank you. The floor, it's yours.
Thanks, Teresa. So today, now Spiros and I and me, we can briefly launch this book. Actually, as well, this is not really a book launch, but it's an opportunity to discuss the themes of design, social innovation, and social entrepreneurship, and also potentially launch a new thematic area around new social economies. So the main question that we want to unpack today is how can we craft new social economies and mobilize creative action in an age of emergency? So today it's a collective discussion around this book, and which actually exemplifies the globalization of social innovation that is exemplified in this book by a wealth of different projects developed from around the world to tackle a wide range of issues. And as well, the diversity is a symptom of the underlying potential of social innovation to be an open, decolonized, and emancipatory tool for societies around the world. We acknowledge that the project presented here have been initiated some time ago, but this book was then edited during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is, in this challenging time, the DESIS network has made a commitment to shift from a separation by necessity towards collaboration by choice. And in fact, we see that the spontaneous social movement emerging from addressing the problems caused by the pandemic are a testament to the power of people working together. For instance, 3D printed respiratory valves and distributed maker communities crafting masks, as well as the ways in which the separation of the quarantine brings people together to work and learn in new digital environments, paint a field of study and action that more than ever proves the value of social innovation and contributes to the shaping of a new social economy. Conviviality, solidarity, and togetherness, values that the neoliberal narrative has pushed to the edge, are becoming central to fighting this invisible threat. And the COVID pandemic as well has been an exceptional training ground for grasping the importance of an approach that is not solely oriented towards profit and or also not based exclusively on the exercise of public authority. After the pandemic and the related economic and social crisis, the recipe for recovery cannot be simply based on a return to public management of the economy. And for this reason, the approach of the social economy, that is the universe of organizations that place at the core of their activities, not the distribution of profits, but rather meeting the needs of their members and communities, today becomes even more promising. And this requires the ability of crafting new social economies, but based on an understanding of the diverse needs and aspirations of local communities, and also tailor the response to their specific context. We'd like to emphasize also that the projects presented today are promising examples of how design for social innovation can contribute to overcoming the present crisis, and also its social, economic, cultural, and environmental consequences. We believe the distributed systems, circular economy, craftsmanship, and social enterprises proposed in these projects that you will hear about today are already prototyping what should be done in order to move towards more resilient and self-sufficient ways of living and working. And by fostering the emergence of local making autonomy and the resilience of communities, new social economies are being crafted, able to alleviate the problems caused by the environmental and social crisis. And this, in turn, is enabling the creation of new distributed support structures that respond to such crises. And would you like to add something else, Spiros?
After that, I think you've covered most things. I think that in much simpler terms, if I had to say, would be that I feel this, and this kind of echoes the sentiment of what's been done in COP26 and around COP26, is that this broken model is not being fixed. So we have to fix a new model while we're driving the existing model. So I think it's a very designerly challenge. So I think I'm looking forward to working on that challenge with all of you and more people, more collaborators, and more allies outside of academia as well.
Okay, then we can move to the keynote provocation soon. Next slide. So to open this event, we are delighted to have Cynthia Lawson-Jaramillo from Parsons, the New School of Design in New York, to give a short keynote provocation. Cynthia is a Brooklyn-based Colombian digital artist, technologist, and educator. She's Dean of the School of Design Strategies, Associate Dean of Parsons, and Associate Professor of Integrated Design. An internationally exhibited artist, her current research focuses on the Parsons DEED Research Lab, which she co-founded in 2007 and currently directs. DEED Lab, which stands for Development Through Empowerment, Entrepreneurship, and Design, brings together students, faculty, and external partners from business, design, development, and policy to model more equitable ways for designers to work with artisans and for artisans to sustain their livelihoods. Cynthia has lectured internationally on design, education, technology, and social practice. She's the daughter of expats, and she was raised in 5 different cities in Latin America and abroad. And now she lives in possibly the smallest neighborhood in Brooklyn, Greenwood Heights. And today, her talk is titled Designing in Economies, Cultural, Moral, and Social. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. And thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Francesco and Spiros, for inviting me to give this presentation. Let me, just a second. Oops. Of course, this always happens. Okay, there we go. Great. Yes, so a lot. I've packed in a lot in my 10 minutes, which I was assigned. Hope to stick to that time as much as possible so we can maximize conversation, dialogue, questions that you may have. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining you from the stolen and ancestral lands of the Lenni Lenape Canarsie people. And encourage you all to also be aware of whose lands and territories you may be occupying. We have in our DEED Lab learned so much from indigenous communities, and in the context of this conversation about crisis and new potential social economies, I hope we can continue to center the crises that our indigenous colleagues experience every single day. There are 3 parts to my talk. The first part is around the context within which we design. And I was really fascinated and excited by this framing of the Carnival of Crisis. Just a fantastic name for a set of convenings. And I really landed on this word crisis, which struck me as there really just one crisis. And I understand that we're here in tandem with COP26 and focused on the climate crisis. But in fact, those of us working in the space of design and social innovation, of course, will acknowledge that there are myriad crises. We are invited by thinkers and politicians to not let good crises go to waste. And the question is, have we let this crisis go to waste? It seems to me that the headlines, this is from yesterday, New York Times, is saying, yes, we are letting it go to waste, because it seems that our governments are willing to agree to have a talk, yet agree to very small changes and actions. And what about designers? Do we let crises go to waste, or do we leap at the opportunity to engage with these complex and wicked problems of the world by creating sometimes designs that don't go far enough to really address the systems and perhaps are band-aid to the symptoms. And this is one example, the life straw, which allows for somebody to filter their water in real time, yet doesn't get to the bottom of the fact that, and the reason why so many people on the planet still don't have drinking water. So how might we be complicit in our band-aids that we design instead of focusing on systemic change? I've been very inspired by this, the framing from this author Anand Giridharadas. In Winners Take All, he has a critique of what he calls philanthrocapitalism, which is really this, the premise of, as a society, we are allowing the hoarders of wealth, the billionaires and the trillionaires, to create foundations and charities to then become the helpers. So they are initially the hoarders, they help break the systems, help perpetuate inequalities, and then we celebrate them through media and through awards when they decide that they want to help in these problems. And how do we ensure that
Cynthia, you're on mute now.
I was muted by the host.
Okay, that's
Arturo Escobar, the Colombian anthropologist, offers an interesting framing, which is that we cannot exit the crises with the categories of the world that created the crises. So what we need, in fact, potentially, we need new social economies, we need new worlds, we need new contexts within which we are designing. And who do we turn to find and create those new worlds? In which world categories are we designing? Perhaps in today's conversation, we could focus on in which economies are we designing? Just some basic definitions here to get on the same page about the language. The basic definition of economy really strikes a chord with the framing of a market-based economy. It's this focus on the administration of material resources. Cultural economy, which is a space where I work in a lot with regards to the artisan sector, doesn't necessarily move the needle in terms of a particular new world, let's say, within which we could understand crises in a different way, because it really, again, focuses on the material, but as long as there's an alignment with cultural products and activities. Social economy, the invitation of today's event, is very, already takes us a step forward, really emphasizing these notions of solidarity, of privileging people over capital, of celebrating participation in governance and democracy. And I'd like to propose you all to perhaps we should take a step even further and center our work within and contextualize it within the moral economy, where we're no longer looking at the material nor the transactional. We are centering the moral issues such as social justice, which we then allow those to be the ones that are influencing fiscal policy or money matters. And like all the right terms, of course, they become buzzwords. The latest book from Mexican President Obrador is towards a moral economy. Bernie Sanders in 2016 was calling for a moral economy at the Vatican and on our own campus at the New School. I saw this poster just last week. And it's an invitation for our university, our students, and our faculty to think about how can we together create these moral economies. And so this is interesting to me as designers. Is the moral economy perhaps gives us that context that we can jointly create and not only work within? So part two, let's think about what are the methods with which we design and how do we get to that designing within the moral economy. If we do a quick image search for design and social innovation, just to use a pair of terms that we hear, that, you know, many of us are here together because of these terms. We mostly see diagrams, absence of humans in these images, except for a few familiar faces, authors, readings, texts. But what the focus here, what I'm interested in is, what are these processes? So these are there are myriad, dozens, you know, probably hundreds of variations on design process translated into different languages, created by all sorts of different organizations, academics, nonprofits, government, etc. And yet, are these really the right ways and the right process to design in the moral economy? Or is there perhaps a different framework? I am very excited by the work that's coming out of the Creative Reaction Lab. It's a Detroit-based lab here in the United States. And they propose that if oppression, inequalities, and inequities are designed, they can be redesigned. And and this is something I've been studying and trying to incorporate into my own teaching, propose a radical way of thinking about a design process that is not linear. They do not suggest steps. There is no order to them. And they do suggest, they do suggest three things that I don't see in any other design process. The first one is acknowledge and dismantle power constructs. What are the powers that are maintaining that crisis the way that it is? And how is my participation within that crisis going to help dismantle that power construct? How am I inviting diverse co-creators? How am I perhaps setting myself aside as a designer to allow for a diverse community to be the ones who are in the designing? And how do we center the histories, potential traumas, and therefore healing of the communities who are most affected by the various crises within which we engage with our work? The third part, who are the people who get to design? These are the Bolivian cholets. These are these amazing architectural buildings that have become a trend, a desirable trend in Bolivia. They have been commissioned by a new group of wealthy Bolivians, the Aymara people. And these buildings are not recognized by the Bolivian Architectural Organization as architecture. Who are the institutional gatekeepers who get to decide who gets to call themselves a designer? And how are we potentially as design schools and as designers also then responsible for that kind of gatekeeping? In my own work in the Deed Lab, we're looking at the artisan sector, the people who made these beautiful centuries-old garments are labeled weavers, indigenous, they are craftspeople, they are perhaps even masters. We do not celebrate them as designers. We don't call them designers. Why is that? Same thing with this stall in Chichicastenango market in Guatemala. And what would happen if we start calling them designers? Would they perhaps be valued and even compensated in better ways? The designer enters the artisan sector with the promise of being the one who can connect the artisans to global markets, creating a very commerce-based, transactional, and market-based economy within which the artisans are hopefully coming out of poverty. Designers are celebrated as that interface between tradition and modernity, and this word helping, which is problematic, trying to help to match craft production to the needs of modern living, as if that is really what is going to move the needle with the crises that our artisan partners face. Not only do we bring in design and extract and really diminish the creativity of the artisans, but in fact, we also colonize through this is a market stall in a town in Guatemala, and you see them all around the country, photocopies of books of patterns created in the global north. They are photocopied, distributed across all these market stalls. Weavers purchase these and replicate these designs as part of their weaving. The artisan sector is valued at $526 billion in the world annually, and yet the majority of the world's artisans live in poverty and have basic needs that are not met and are in some ways marginalized. Where is that money flowing? Who is extracting the money and value from artisans? Many organizations, companies, brands, governments are looking at the artisan sector as a solution towards, for example, sustainable fashion or slowness, as a resistance to fast fashion, but these commerce-based solutions are not necessarily helping. In fact, the research from anthropologists is showing us that the global markets, this insistence on alleviating poverty through market-based solutions, is leading to even deeper impoverishment of artisans and to the loss of important cultural traditions, which is precisely one of the reasons why many people start these kinds of organizations. So what do we do and how do we label this craft that we see here? This video is in real time. It's not been sped up. It's a weaver weaving a sombrero aguadeño in what is now Aguadas, Colombia, also known as the Panama hat, its globalized term. Alfredo Gutierrez suggests the term designs from the Souths as a way perhaps to celebrate and to acknowledge that we need new terminology to be able to celebrate the contributions from those others or otherwise designers. And I hesitate to translate his words because they're so beautifully written in Spanish, but it generally says, I ask myself about those designs that are not, those that are below, next to, and even beyond the European heritage, and that they are called otherwise. I invite you all to continue the conversation. I look forward to our dialogue, any questions that you may have, and let's ask ourselves, in which economies are we designing, and perhaps in which ones do we want to be designing? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was fantastic. I mean, just some brief notes about this. Actually, I really like your emphasis on the moral economy, and as well, that's very relevant as well when we, even with this Carnival of Crisis, it's very much about climate justice, and also how the environmental issue is also very much a social injustice issue. And also the issue of helping others that perpetuates the colonization of design. And this is really opening up a new field in decolonizing design, which is very much needed. And I think, in fact, what we want to gather here today, it's a diversity of approaches from around the world, and as well giving voice to an agency to people from all over the world that have different approaches that we can learn from, and shifting the narratives of European or like Western centered design that can help others. And I like, in fact, the fact that as designers, often we are parachuted into communities with the assumption that we can help others and use our knowledge and expertise to solve their problems. But instead, we need to have a much more embedded and situated approach when we can craft meaningful social innovations. Yeah, lots of interesting discussions, and also the notion of designers otherwise. So as well, rethinking about value of ourselves and the things that we design. Unless, Spiros, do you have any other comments on this, or shall we move into?
I think we'll keep the questions for the
Right.
question. Sorry, I have to be the time police here. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll be back. So we're going to move. Sorry, I'm DJing Zoom at the same time, so that's a new thing.
In the meanwhile, yes, we can briefly introduce the book, Design for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So in the past more than 10 years now, the DESIS network with its 55 DESIS Lab that are representing the nodes of this international network have set up and participated in a large number of social innovation projects. And looking at these initiatives, it is clear that they take place in different areas of application and adopt different tools and strategies. And also some of them are visible in different, on the website of DESIS and also in other events. However, until a few years ago, there was no a systemic work to map out all these interventions and also observe and make sense of what was happening. So recently, the DESIS network, when it was led by Carla Cipolla as international coordinator, they had produced a map of the DESIS Lab project, and this is now available in the DESIS website. And as well, we acknowledge that this map is not perfect and can be improved, but still it's a step forward in understanding what the DESIS Labs do from around the world, and also what the DESIS network is really about. And as well, from the analysis of these projects, we have identified 3 main thematic areas. And these are design for social innovation in cities, design for social innovation and services, and finally, design for social innovation and entrepreneurship. And so on the basis of this observation, we decided to create 3 dedicated digital spaces called DESI's Thematic Areas. And so we have produced a series of DESI's booklets that are being published. And today we will talk about the 3rd one, which is Design for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And in the chat, we have already shared with you the link in case you are interested. So this thematic area, TAD3, includes projects that focus on design, social innovation, and entrepreneurship. And the aim of this thematic area is to gain insights into the project characteristics, the aims, methodologies, results, and the stakeholders involved. And as well, also from the analysis of these different projects, we have also identified some sub-thematic areas, and these are design for distributed production and circular economy, design for a new craftsmanship, and design for social inclusion and empowerment. And Spiros will introduce the first one with its speakers.
Hi. So the first thematic area of the book is associated with models of distributed production and the circular economy. And for me, it's something that's been very central in a way in translating the ideas behind the green and circular economy, and finding ways to make it in a less resource and incentive and a more localized production, while at the same time providing meaningful employment. So I'm going to be served by 4. 2 of them are going to be asynchronous, amazing people who work in much more colder climates than mine. It's going to be Helen Day Fraser and Keith Doyle from Emily Carr University in Canada. And through video from Malmo in Sweden, we're going to be joined by Anna Seravalli. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Helen and Keith for their presentation of their project called Clothing. I should stop sharing my screen so you can share yours. Here we go. Hi.
Hi.
There you go.
Oh, awesome. I can see my notes. This is fabulous. Okay.
Good start.
I'm
We
just.
can also see your notes, though.
Oh, you can. Well, then we'll take that out.
Just switch.
How do I do that, Keith? We're losing time here.
It's okay. I'm the time police, but I'm more like the Swedish police than the Greek police.
Keith, what have you done?
Ellen, if you hit play again, Ellen, hit play again, and then in your upper right corner, you'll see a little grid with arrows, and it'll flip your screens for you.
What's that?
How's that? What do you see?
Well, you're not
Nothing
sharing
yet.
right now, so we can't see.
Who is this goddess who is talking from?
She's wonderful. It's Louise Saint-Pierre. Okay, we're almost there.
Yeah,
2
sorry.
secs here. Play.
Perfect.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Wait.
No,
Other way around. Other way around.
Sorry. We had it. We had it. This is different. Sorry. There it goes. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Up and
Yeah,
now,
you can see now.
except we're in the wrong spot.
That's right.
Okay.
There we go.
So hello from Vancouver, and sorry for the sort of clumsy start there. This short presentation will speak to ongoing work that we've been doing as designers connected to the DESIS network. It's an opportunity to speak of a vantage point that we have in this place on the west coast of Canada, Turtle Island, and the perspective and the route forward that it has afforded. My name is Hélène Day Fraser. I'm an associate professor of design at Emily Carr University. Along with my colleague, co-conspirator, and very good friend, Keith Doyle, also an associate professor of design, and like me, co-founder and co-director of another research center called Material Matters. We've had many adventures, and amongst them, is a project called Clothing as Conversation. This research initiative ran in various funded forms from 2012 to 2018. At the onset, we proposed to use conversation as a means to reconsider clothing from statement to conversation, communication, one-to-one, many-to-many, and the implications of digital technology, production, use, additive manufacturing, distributed networks, resilient systems, and ultimately what it means to design responsibly in a contemporary context. The project involved many, many other people. But for our part, at the beginning of it all, we drew on our shared creative experience, training, and interests. We had a lot of assumptions and drew on many aspects of these categories to build the Clothing as Conversation project. We knew and had a hunch from the very beginning that the different elements would interact and inform one another, and that they would be intuitive, sometimes unpredictable, but we thought possibly fruitful. People were absolutely key to the work that over a 6-year period engaged more than 80 people. Materials making and our creative actions also acted as key provocations to help us move our work forward. In hindsight, work was very much about relations with people, embracing ambiguity and uncertain routes, taking on linear modes of work, non-linear rather, modes of working and sorting together. With place, a bit of a surprise, the degree to which place and the surroundings we found ourselves in would become significant to our moves and choices, and this was much more than we had anticipated. Both of these aspects of relations, along with material, form, acts of making, drew us to acknowledge and confront the importance of our individual and collective positionality in this place on the West Coast of North America. The actions we took on heightened our consciousness of the spaces we inhabit and the boxes that contain us. Collectively, we were intent on reframing and trying to open them up. We made many attempts at this, and somewhere along the way, this plus sign, a marker of sorts, became a key instigator for us. We made many pluses in many mediums, most often out of cloth. A garment of sorts, we wore many of our pluses in many places and situations, tapping into always the notion of conversation to help us open up new ways of thinking of our work as designers, makers, users. As the plus went out, it kept being situated and resituated in terms of people's place in the world. In 2017, 28 people across the globe who'd expressed curiosity, interest, and also asked if they could buy one were given our plus provocation to wear or live with, along with many means of other connection that we dreamed up to put that plus in place. Connection to place grew. In Vancouver, we live almost on the edge. In my case, a 5-minute walk from my home is a ravine with steep canyon walls that the black bears come down. To the north, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers without roads, without buildings. But it is not empty. The bears are evidence of that. It has belonged to others for millennia. Indigenous people have been living in this area for over 8,000 years. This is the land, unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam nations. Many, most of us here, are uninvited guests. Finding this information and sitting with it is something that we've been doing increasingly of late. As designers, researchers, it has got us thinking. The observation that Eurocentrism is not a geographical issue, but an epistemic and aesthetic one is important. For my part, and Keith also, we think that ontological, sorry, I have a strange feedback. I just want to say that we also think that the ontological implications of being are also key to this equation. Clothing as Conversation opened up new routes for us, new methods, processes, materials for craft, TARP, a textile adaptation research program, Radical Reorientation, a project looking to recalibrate design actions and outcomes towards non-colonial modalities, seeking local sustainable relations with materials. Tactics initially situated in TARP disturbance and interplay, reorganization, renewal, regeneration have shifted, informed, and being used in the other areas of our investigation, allowing us to address our work looking to new futures, concentrating on interdisciplinary research practices, what happens when people of different fields and expertise and experience come together, climate responsibility, paradigm shifts, developing new material object systems to address needed systemic changes in the way we engage and relate with our world, and decoloniality, pluriversality, needed systemic change in the way that we engage in all the beings in our world. I just want to check, can everybody hear me clearly? Okay, great. We've enlisted a whole series, range of tactics, uncertainty, storytelling, transposition and transfer, object companion, relations and possibilities, making practices, material tensions, care. A bit like this, to keep us on track as a mean to address this. Marking out and thinking, and thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to keep it moving, so I'll ask to share my screen. Yeah, you can see my screen. And I'll play the video from our lovely Swedish colleagues who couldn't make it.
Good evening.
Can you hear the sound now? 1 second, yeah.
Everybody, first of all, we are very sorry that we couldn't join tonight, but we hope we can anyhow tell you something about Returen, this initiative we have been developing together here in Malmö. And my name is Anna Seravalli, and I'm a senior lecturer and researcher in design.
And my name is Savita Upadhyay. I am a civil servant working as a developing engineer at VA Syd. VA Syd is the municipal waste collection organization in Malmö. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Returen, but first I'm going to talk about where Returen lies. It lies in the south of Malmö in an area called Lindängen. Lindängen is an area with social economical challenging and it has about 7,000 inhabitants. The services that we provide at Returen are waste collection, where the citizen can leave waste like light bulbs, batteries, hazardous waste and electronic waste. So it's a complement to the waste fraction that you normally can leave in your waste room in your apartment building. We also have a free shop where people can leave and pick up things. And that is because we want to change the way people think about consumption. We offer different kind of workshops where people can learn how to prolong the life of different kind of products or learn how to upcycle waste to new things. In that way, we give knowledge about how you can repair things and also about to change the view of what is waste and what is a resource. In Returen, the focus is always on the inhabitants and the citizen and which needs they have. We work together with in co-production with several organizations in the civil society, other departments in the municipality, and even companies. And what we do is that the different needs that the citizen or the inhabitants have, there we try to give them agency to overcome their challenges, and in that way help them forward. And within Returen, we work with a strategy that the EU has decided. It's called the waste hierarchy. The higher up in the level you are, the better way to handle your waste. And in Returen, we give the opportunity to recycle your waste better. We have a system to for you to reuse products rather than buying new ones. And we give knowledge about how you can reduce your waste amount.
And beside that, as Savita was saying, these activities of upcycling and making are also very much a matter of for citizens to meet, but also perhaps to find ways to become or to be as citizens on their own terms. In this sense, Returen is exploring how circular economy, makers movement, and upcycling activities can be used not only to create new companies, job opportunities, and so forth, but also very much as a way of understanding economy and creating an economy which is about creating social and individual value for the citizens and the communities they live in. And Returen has been having a quite troubled history. It has been founded in 2015, and today in these days, it's the third time that is risking to be shut down. And as always, citizens in the area are very much active, reaching out for politicians, the media, to find ways for Returen to continue. And why this very troubled history? What we are seeing is that despite the fact Returen is very much meeting all the possible goals on social and environmental sustainability that the city has been putting forward, but they are also, you can find them on a regional and on a national level. The way Returen works as a co-produced service that is cutting across departments and involving other actors is very much clashing against current structures and procedures within the municipality, as well as norms and understandings of what does it mean to be a public organization, which make very, very difficult to drive these kind of initiatives. So to conclude, we thought to go back to a quote that it's 10 years old, that came from the Young Foundation, who was describing the, at that time, quite new idea of social innovation as a matter of fostering something that can emerge very much from the meeting between the trees, as the big organizations like the public sector, which are quite stable and robust, but also a bit slow, and the bees. And with the bees, they were meaning civil society, citizens, and other small actors that are quite more dynamic and active. And at least in Sweden, 10 years down the road, we really see the value between the trees and the bees. And it's not just seen by researchers or single civil servants, but it's also recognized on a policy level, for example. But still, there is a huge challenge of how not only to favor this meeting, but to support them on the long run, and very much how to create and make structures, procedures that can support the flourishing of a fair and sustainable economy. It's very much understood as a matter of being driven by the encounter of these different actors and their collaboration on the long run.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we move back to the slide deck? So that was great. And also it's interesting to see how there are overlaps between the different sub-thematic areas, because already Helen and Keith also touched upon new craft, which is actually the focus of the second sub-thematic areas. So this area is about design for a new craftsmanship. And in fact, we are witnessing an increased interest in craftsmanship as a more meaningful model of design, production, and consumption. So from this perspective, a new craft economy is emerging as a timely opportunity to set up resilient and distributed micro-productions. Artisanship is also linked to the shaping of a distributed economy, which is relocalizing production thanks to the emergence of small, networked, and less hierarchical micro-factories. And from a social standpoint, the maker movement has also activated an ongoing revolution of the manufacturing sector towards a co-making economy, driven by the pleasure of making things by hand, and enabled by democratized access to interactive and digital fabrication technologies, while also enhancing individual and community well-being. And to exemplify this thematic sub-area, we have Amresh Panigrahi from the National Institute of Design, Desis Lab in India. And he will present the Khadi Way of Living project, which is aimed at bridging the gap between the handmade paper craft community and contemporary Indian aspiration. Over to you, Amresh.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. Well, is it visible? Yeah. So
Yes.
Thank you so much. Welcome from India. Myself, Amresh Panigrahi. I'm the Associate Senior Faculty in National Institute of Design, Gandhinagar. I also had the NID Desis Lab in Ahmedabad. So what I'm going to talk about is Khadi, a way of living. This is National Institute of Design, which is west coast of India and Gujarat. So NID started in Gujarat and is the national importance of the Act of Parliament. And we have 20 disciplines, 3 campuses. It started with a main vision in 1958, when India was free from getting the independence. At that moment, there's a promise of looking at the tradition and modernity, how design can play a role. That was the main objective of NID has been formed in India. So, so how India is doing at this moment, if you look at. So the world is moving with a very fast pace, so the India is. The fast-paced human society, looking at constantly creating many blind spots. And so we are dealing with the new generation of complex social, cultural, economic challenges of our time. So the fast-paced human society is also weakening the coexistence between human being, environment, and material culture. The greed never allows society to live up to its best potential. The world is losing the harmonious life with the sense of belonging. The fast-paced human society is also bringing inequalities, very much visible throughout our living act. There is a constant struggle with our well-being. So today, the world is actively discovering an answer to these blind spots. The answer through the decades revolve around the preserving our ecology, culture, and human interaction. So the Master's Design student of NID, in collaboration with Khadi and Village Industry Commission of India, took this challenge to save the future of our local. So India, with the visionary dream of development to the right of nations to the self-determination, the Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, as the value of Mahatma Gandhi is perfect example of ethical living and pacifism made Gandhi emerge in a silent economical revolution, revolved with the world to inspire till now. So Gandhi's principles and practices and beliefs are timeless. So majorly, if you look at the principles are revolving around 3 different topics: inclusivity, social harmony, and sustainability. So our discovery of design journey with the Gandhian principle embedded in Indian culture, which has gracefully stood the test of time. So we put an effort to understand the existing local challenges. The rapid growth of textile industries of Ahmedabad made us realize waste management is critical. Then we saw the student witness the very humble attempt of Kalam Kush, a wing of Gandhi Ashram, Khadi Village Industry, converting this waste fabric into the beautiful handmade paper. The dream of designer envisioning Gandhi's ideas, wholeness, coalesce into the contemporary context, started seeing urban setting as a much better way. So designers dream a khadi philosophy as a way of modern living, re-establishing the connection between the local village, industry, and contemporary aspiration of ethical living. So the design for craftsmanship reimagined a khadi's way of living in different light. The design for the new craftsmanship considered the street children to engage in the craft making for self-reliance. Design imagined diffusing the social differences with the cooperation model, evoke social harmony in the local context. So that reminds the Gandhi's way of looking at it, saying that if the khadi will cease to have any values in my eyes, if doesn't useful employing the millions. So design of new craftsmanship consider the promoting the idea of less is more and more precious when it is self-made. That reminds the Gandhis one of the quote, we must be the world we want to create. Design for new craftsmanship consider the shifting consumer attention from the linear thinking to the circularity. Your action express your priorities, that what Mahatma Gandhi has said. The design for new craftsmanship considered the reimagined and modernist truthful living and free from the greed. What Gandhi said is there is enough for the need of everyone in this world, but not for the greed of everyone. So we evoke the sense of belonging. So what Gandhi has said, the snake has their place in the agricultural economy of the village, but our village seems to be realizing it. So the new craftsmanship consider the reimagining the object as a play and grounded with the root. So if we are to create the peace in our world, we must begin from our children's, that in consideration to the culture. I must thank you to the founder, who is Khadi and Village Industry Commission of India, acknowledge Kalam Kush, the one wing of Gandhi Ashram, NID Research and Publication Department, the brave student of Lifestyle Accessory Design and NID Gandhinagar, National Institute of Design, Department of Lifestyle Accessory Design and International Center for Indian Craft, NID Ahmedabad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amresh. That's terrific. And in fact, really, I loved the references to Gandhi as a way to actually widen our references to sustainability and social innovation. Very powerful. Very quickly moving to the next speaker, who is Luis Fernando Figueiredo from Federal University of Santa Catarina, NAS Design, this is lab in Brazil. And he will be joined also by Marco Onge, and they will present the project Ludificar, that aims at giving a second life to waste materials through making playful games for children in a social context of vulnerability. Over to you.
Ok, obrigado pela apresentação. E que primeiramente queria agradecer o convite, até de poder mostrar nossas atividades do grupo, né? Muito obrigado pela apresentação, pelo convite. E agradecer principalmente a Carla e o Manzini, que a gente vem estudando desde o início lá da rede, Desis e do Lola, né?
Thank you for the invitation to present our ideas and our group, especially to Carla Cipolla and Ezio Manzini, for thirsting us to for the action we have taken since beginning with Lola Project and later with Desis Network. Thank you all.
Nosso projeto tem um contexto principalmente com a problemática do lixo e buscar uma solução criativa para ser encaminhada pelo upcycle, né? Uma solução social e econômica.
We are a research group formed by professor, graduate students and undergraduate students and we look for creative solution to resolve problems of the sustainability in social, environmental, and economic dimensions.
Nosso projeto é fazer artefatos lúdicos para suprir essas necessidades sociais com o suporte do pensamento de design. Né?
The context of this project is to make artifacts with the problem of the playing, and we create a solution to sustainability.
O nosso processo de design, né, nós estamos projetando com comunidades tradicionais, utilizando os princípios fundamentais do pensamento design. Isso. E pode falar, Marcos.
The design process with traditional community using the fundamental principle of design thinking, inspiration, idealization, and materialization.
Next. O nosso grupo pensa principalmente no compartilhamento do nosso conhecimento com as comunidades locais tradicionais, proporcionando assim uma capilaridade do design. Marcos.
Okay, our group thinking in sharing the knowledge of the community and using this knowledge to produce design connection with making products of attend this demand of social innovation.
Next slide. Nossa jornada de ação é principalmente buscar alguma utilidade para esses materiais de descarte, né? E principalmente dar capacitação em produção de artefato para essas comunidades e gerar conteúdos lúdicos de valores sociais e aplicar essas ações educacionais e de lazer também.
Our journey have steps of action, and the step one is look for some use to waste materials. Next is to provide training in artifacts for production with rapid manufacturing, and the next step is generate playful with social values and apply education with leisure actions.
Next slide, please. A primeira ideia desse projeto, a continuidade dele, deu origem a um sistema integrado de interações entre as partes interessadas.
The first idea gave rise a system of integration and interaction between stakeholders.
E proporcionou a criação de um espaço maker design para capacitação e geração de renda dessas comunidades.
The creation of maker design space for training with station projects to generate income.
E assim, identificação de valores tradicionais de raiz dessas comunidades.
And then the identification of traditional root values for local context by research.
E esse conhecimento ele vai ficar em nuvem para dar o empoderamento pelos valores tradicionais locais.
And this knowledge have available in cloud to empower the traditional local values, quilombola, favela, fishermen, for example.
Next slide, please. Com isso, a gente vai criar uma plataforma habilitante em nuvens, para a capacitação dessas comunidades com esses espaços maker, para a geração de renda e formação de uma rede de ações, com todo o conhecimento em nuvem para ser replicado.
This provides the empowerment of communities through design maker space for income generation and forming a network of actions with acknowledged and in the cloud available for replication.
Next, please. Então, nosso modelo de multiplicador sistêmico é praticamente um contexto local de raiz para entender esse contexto tradicional, gerar uma capacitação conforme habilidades dessas comunidades, geração de artefatos, geração de negócios e gestão dos processos também. Com isso, a gente vai gerar produtos e valores imateriais, geração de rendas, jogos educacionais e brinquedos inclusivos.
This action model have the root local context to understanding the traditional local context and training to adapt training courses to community skills, creation of artifacts, business model, design management, and product with tangible values, income generation, education games, inclusive toys, for example.
Next. Obrigado. Obrigado a
So
todos.
thank you very much for all.
Thank you all very much. It was a beautiful presentation. Just have to do my Zoom magic. As we move on, we move to our next theme, and the final theme is going to be design for social inclusion and empowerment. I have the pleasure of having three colleagues of ours from Africa on the matter, and I think again that's something that we were very happy to be able to do, to have people from all over the country, only missing Oceania, Australia. So the first one is going to be Ralitza Debra from Design Knust, sorry, but what's the word? See, I'm already bumbling. He's going to talk about Zongo. Hi.
Hi. All right. First, you share the slides.
Yes, you just say next and I change it.
All right.
I'm very good at clicking.
Very much. Yes. So hello everyone, and I'm joining you from Ghana, West Africa. And I'm super excited to share a project about Zongo. And we focused a lot about community development and social empowerment within the Zongo community. And on the next slide, you see the Zongo map. This is actually the conceptual map of all the points where we connected, and we found there was possibilities for us to engage and interact with community and actually see what we can find there that together we can work with, and also come up with some interesting solutions, but not from us mainly, but actually from the community members. So it's very conceptual, not the actual map. So it was our way of navigating all researchers, how we saw the area. So this was how we saw it in all the ports where there are possibilities. So if you want to see more of that, you can see more of that information in the Zongo book, and you can see all the details about the spot. So on the next slide, yeah, so this is the actual picture of the area. You can see that it's an Islamic community, so that's why you have the mosques there. And then sources of water and how they also harvest water from the natural environment. and how the school and classroom settings are. So you can see the blackboard there. So that's how it looks like. And a lot of things that we found there, we realized that there was so much potential in the community that we can actually work with. And the interesting part is that it's just a major road that divides the university from the community. So it was a great opportunity for us to actually engage with them. So on the next slide, so these are our interactions with core members in the community, where we were listening to them and actually getting ideas about what they really want. And these are the women leaders telling us what they feel will really benefit them. And going further, we use their ideas as a photo voice to showcase the possibilities they themselves have found there in the community for members around to engage with it and even add more ideas on what is possible. And on the next slide, so some of the insights, we realized that it's a very rich area. You can actually get a lot of human capital and also a lot of natural capital there. So there's a possibility for university community to strategically work with them to develop these areas. Also a chance for community garden and also spaces for cultural activities, education and innovation. But top of the list was the skill development program that most of the community leaders were really pushing for that. So we moved into a sewing project as a way of skills development as a starter. So you see that on the next slide, we started using found materials in the community, which were mainly fabrics and wigs, fabrics that you can find around. But then we've moved further into using flexi banners that would have ended up in the landfill to actually create some of these artifacts in school bags so that the young boys and girls in the community can actually also use it for their school and etc. So you find more samples on the next slide. So also some shopping bags that were made from the flexi materials that we would have just left it on the landfill. So we're repurposing, and these were being done by the young women. And these days now the boys also want to do some. So we are busy working on that. So going further, on the next slide, we realized that there was really a need for us to deepen our strategic design scenarios and make it more inclusive, and also consider persons with disability as well within the community so that it's not one-sided and it's also more sustainable, and provide skills across borders. We look forward to crafting new social economies. And there was also a need to also consider training and digital skills training as a way of providing skills that even in the face of distraction, they can still work and work remotely so that they can actually improve upon their skills. And the university community was also open, so you can see that both students and the members on the other side, that is Asia Zongo, work together to come up with innovative solutions. So on the next slide, so one of the core things that we always look at is to root our concepts and design ideas from our local and indigenous knowledge systems. So when you find yourself in the face of distraction, so we have what we call the symbol Kwanyal support, which is translated as the wisdom knot. And it shows that when you have difficult situations, you need to wear your creative hat on and use your wisdom, ingenuity, intelligence, patience as a way of crafting new economies, and also try to come up with ideas within your local context, looking at what you have as a way of solving your own problems rather than looking out. So this is how we reflect on our ideation, looking at local knowledge and indigenous knowledge also as a way of decolonizing design and also see the members of Aida Zongo as the main actors within this space. So thank you very much. And on the next slide, first, you see, of course, our contacts. And if you want more information, there's so much in the book already. And you can contact us at desis.knusc.gmail. And of course, more information from the KNUST website. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the presentation. Over to you, Spyros.
Hi, over to me, and I'll make a straight laser pass to Ritsi Moalosi from the University of Botswana, who will be presenting a very, very interesting and provocative, I think, project called Beryl Societies. So Ritsi, welcome, pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Richie from the DESIS lab at the University of Botswana. We are going to be, one of what we are doing at the DESIS lab is we are studying case studies, different case studies from the local context. We want to learn from how communities are surviving, how are they, how are they solving their own problems, and see what lessons can we learn from design to move forward. Can you, next slide, please? Yeah, this is the structure of the presentation. I'll just flash it. I'm not going to go into details because, yes, thank you. No, next slide. Yes, the Beryl societies are based on this two quotations, one from Emeritus Desmond Tutu, that my humanity is bound up in yours, for we are only human together. I am because we are, as we are, therefore I am. You could see the two quotations are from the philosophy of Ubuntu, that they are promoting connectiveness, community spirit, unlike individualism, because we want to see how communities come together to solve their own problems and what design can learn from that. Next slide, please. As I've said, the Beryl societies, the foundation is from this philosophy of Ubuntu, and they sprouted up through grassroots innovation. They were faced with this problem of, they wanted to bury their beloved one on a dignified funeral, but the problem was shortage of cash, because it was in rural areas where the source of income is limited. It's unlike in towns. And then people came together and see how can we solve this kind of problem, and then they formed the Beryl societies, where it brought communities together. So it is more of a humanist approach to design. Next slide, please. I think I've explained a bit of this, but the foundation of Beryl societies, they were started by elderly poor women in rural areas, and that's where they came together to form this kind of informal kind of insurance policy or funeral policy. And as you will see as we go on, this idea, which started from poor rural women, it has now grown into different areas in the country. Next slide, please. Now, what are some of the benefits of Beryl societies? The members who form the Beryl society, they have direct access to cash, because as I've explained, it started in rural areas where cash was hard to find. And once they have that kind of society, when there's a bereavement, there's some money which will be given to the bereaved family. So they'll be in a position to bury their beloved one in a dignified manner. And there are Beryl society as a form of social protection. This is the time where people are really vulnerable. It's not only financial, it's also on psychosocial as well. So they allow people to have this kind of life insurance funeral policy. Next slide, please. Here, this slide is showing two burial societies. One on the left is from a rural area. Now the one on the left is a workers' burial society. Next slide. And the benefits are shown there. You can just move to the next slide. Yes, as I indicated, you know, it's not only financial support, but it's also social psycho support, where now the members would you know, come to support the bereaved family during that time of need, and you know, this is a self-supporting network which really relieve some of the pain, where people are lonely and, you know, they've just lost their beloved one, and this is where they come in. And it's not only after the funeral, the people will just, in some of the societies, they will even support the family. Maybe they've lost a breadwinner. They will even buy grocery for the family for the next year. So you could see it's not just more or less like a stop measure, which is just one off. After the funeral, everybody leaves. The support goes on and on and on. Next slide, please. In terms of governance, the government requires that all burial societies should be registered with the Ministry of Labor and Home Affairs, and then all burial societies should have a constitution. There's a simplified template where, you know, societies can just fill in the gaps to have a constitution. And part of the constitution requires that all societies should have an annual general meeting where an executive committee is elected by the members, and then the financial report is given and that. And decisions are participatory. It's more democracy, consensus decision making. Next slide, please. As I've said, burial societies, when they started, they were started by women. Now they have evolved. We have family burial societies, we have communal burial societies, we have church burial societies, social groups, maybe football, different sports, they have their own. Work-based, the one which you have seen, youth burial societies, and they grow organically throughout the country. When it started with just a simple few women gathered together, and then, you know, people could buy in the idea that this is something which is very useful. Next slide, please. Just flash this one. Next slide. It's just showing different burial societies. Some of the burial societies, what they will do is they will charge you a joining fee, a minimal joining fee, and then subscription fee, which might be around $10. And then they would start some initiative to generate funds so that they can sustain the society throughout. And some of the initiative, which is really, you know, people in rural areas, they will do this as sustainable product service system, PSS, SPSS, where they will be leasing out or renting out some of their equipment to people. Maybe you have a wedding, you can go and rent out a tent from some of this society, or even chairs and all that. And they also give out loans to people who would not be in a position to get loans from banks on a very low interest rate. Next slide, please. You can just, this is some of the activities of fundraising. You can just move to the next slide. Yes, in conclusion, burial societies, they started from a bottom-up approach to innovation, and they believe in an emphatic approach and collective problem solving. This is more or less like a co-creation or co-creativity. And they were proactive. They had this problem. They didn't wait for the government to come and solve their problem. They did something for that. And they're based on social impact, not commercial. They're not commercial driven. And design education can learn how, how people from rural areas can come to networks and solve their own problems in a participatory manner. Thank you. This is my last slide.
Thank you. And wow, that was so rich and very inspiring, all of this. Well, there are lots of comments. Please as well, first of all, let's clap our hands. And then I would encourage everyone to write in the chat if you want, because we're moving towards the more interactive part of tonight. So please write messages or questions in the chat and we will pick them up. I wanted just briefly to try to make sense of what resonates to me. I loved the unfolding, starting from Helen and Keith, of this embedded and situated practice where we had to acknowledge our positionality and also the care in this, which is so important when we focus in this type of project. And as well, it was interesting also moving towards Amresh, the cooperative model, and also the need for finding new models to sustain social innovation activities, because in fact, beyond social innovation, we also need an infrastructure or an economic model that also allows for this social innovation to be sustained over time. Also, there were the notion of self-reliance was present in the presentation of several people, but also actually as well, the communities, if they are disadvantaged, it's also, there is a tension to what extent they need to become reliant on the designers, but also instead how we can move towards community resilience instead. And then I loved the photo voice from Ralitza, and as well that links to the storytelling from Louise as well. And finally, as well, was very interesting to see from our fellow Africans different notions of Ubuntu and also wisdom not, very interesting and inspiring. And as well, Richie mentioned consensus and the constitution, but also sometimes actually social innovation has been criticized for finding consensus, but also we should allow also dissenting voices to emerge. And what if not everybody disagrees? But how we can allow a multiplicity of agendas as well to interact. And finally, as well, Richie finished with bottom-up, but also I find in my work that often bottom-up social innovations are not sustainable over time. So in my experience as a designer, I define myself as using an approach that I call middle up down. That means bridging from the bottom up with top-down support organizations. So actually in the first part, we've seen local production and consumption and closing the loop of resources. This project focused on food production, clothing and waste management, and also how these projects can lead to meaningful employment and also to retain money within the local context. And then moving to the second part, we've seen a number of makers using locally available resources and materials, and also a new craft, which doesn't mean only making things by hands, but also using digital tools and produce flexible and meaningful batches of products. And also craft as a unique and producing unique, pleasurable, both useful and beautiful products that actually embed a timeless know-how and are deeply rooted in the material culture of a place. And finally, as well, in the third part, it was very much about sometimes these communities are at the bottom of an ecosystem that is unsustainable, but instead you can use design and craft as means of empowerment and giving voice and agency to people through the gaining of knowledge, resources, and tools so that they become agents of their own alternatives. And also they need to create new forms of organizations such as actually, well, I don't know if Cynthia and Spiros also want to comment on something, but it's also interesting here at this slide, we have actually this provocation that maybe anyone can answer. So what we can, because we acknowledge that some of these projects are a bit old, but we are interested to know what's next and also what we can learn from these projects to tackle the contemporary climate emergency and also build a more resilient future. Would anybody like to answer this provocation?
Can I simply add something to you? I think that first off, I'm very humbled to be in the company of such amazing people who are doing this type of work around the world. And I think that I found out very early that someone already framed everything for me, and it was our first presenter, I think, Helen, because this idea of the Eurocentric ontology, epistemology, and the idea that only what is scientific can be factual and anything else is kind of useless is, I think, at the very root of what we're trying to decolonize our design practice, our design scholarship, and everything around our work in a way around the world. And I think that in many forms is this idea that the traditional forms of knowledge, be it the elders in the community, be it tacit knowledge, being ways of knowing, is not very applicable in a European market-centered capitalism. So I think that it's, and in a way to answer Antonio's question, it's about finding which of those patterns we want to take with us and which part of those patterns we want to get rid of. Because I think at the end of the day, the kind of the main theme is values. What those great men, Desmond Tutu and Mahatma Gandhi, they all had values, and they got to communicate and be the beacon of the values of an entire movement, national movement, pretty much a social movement. So I think that it's about being slow and humble. It's about finding traditional ways of knowing, traditional ways of caring for each other, and ways of being together. And just one final note as I pass it over to Cynthia and everyone else, I think something that Richie mentioned as the starting point of the project, and something that I think we need to also address in this modernizing in a way design is women, putting women, the women on the center and letting them be the leading voices, letting them better take care of us, because us men, we might be trying to shed our toxic masculinity, but we're as well products of this environment. So I really think that we need to, trust the grandmas, as we say in Greece. Always trust the grandmas. So, Cynthia, if you would like to add something, not that you're a grandma. That sounded very, very wrong.
Very controversial statement there. I am happy to respond, though I don't know if I want to carry additional labor now on behalf of the men who maybe have gotten us into this mess of the climate emergency in the first place. But really interesting provocation there to think about, and I'm totally distracted by that, Spiro. So thank you. Likewise, I so loved Helen's kicking us off with this quote about Eurocentrism not being a geographical issue. Absolutely, the models of by which we design and are designing and are educating design have totally been exported and globalized. And I really appreciated the invitation across all of the presentations to really think about new frameworks by which we can maybe try to understand some of the work. I have a couple of questions if any of the people who presented want to come back into dialogue here. But one of them really, it relates in part to the question from Antonio in the chat about the patterns how do we get from a project or an intervention or a particular design and think about how does that become an economy or economies? And to me, it's really about scale. And when we talk about the word social, to me, I think needs to have a kind of scalar implication. And I wonder if how many of the frameworks that were presented today as alternatives can scale up through the various explorations that our panelists presented. And the other question I had, one for Rituran, who's not here, but maybe they'll watch the recording later, but as well as for the Ludificar project that rely on or look at issues around waste. The waste is coming in part from, and as a result from unsustainable or non-sustainable supply chains. And how does the solution address the source of that waste? And ultimately, how do we create designs that will productively flourish in a paradox of wanting to create something that will ultimately disappear because the source material that feeds it will no longer be there? And that to me is just, it seems like this infinite loop kind of idea that we could really leap circularity into degrowth and think about scaling in that way, perhaps.
Helen and Kate.
Yeah, I'm just going to put this hand down here. So I'm thinking about the economies and sort of this piece about scaling and how we pass things on. And I think that you know, in our case with our project, and I see so many colleagues here in Vancouver in design struggling with this, partly because of COVID. So, you know, that was a project that went on for a long period of time. And the way that it passed on, we didn't realize at first, was really very much through conversation and storytelling. That's what held the thread, not a diagram, not like, we did lots of diagrams, but that's not what held the piece together. What held it together was this passing off from one person to the next. And each time a sort of reconfiguration based on who people were in the equation. And so I was thinking about this because it worked while we were all together. And what's happened now is that we're finally getting together after almost 2 years apart and not being in the same place. And we've almost lost the thread, except that we have things from that project. So I don't think of them as solid designs or outcomes, but we have all the process. And that is now, I've realized, become the way that we're passing on in order to keep it going. So I guess it's a little bit of a response, Francesco, to this piece of like, you know, bottomed up doesn't work. And maybe like, what is the thing? I think it's maybe not where it's coming from, it's how we do it. And that maybe this piece of, we often talk about storytelling within DESIS. Like, what if we think of that as the pieces of thread that enable us to make these really radical shifts in terms of how we self-organize? Just a random thought.
No, that's great. Thank you. Did anybody want to answer to the questions raised by Cynthia?
I think I can try. I can try to start because I think it's something that kind of everyone working in this field is. It's a roller coaster. You know, the good days when you're doing good work, it's great work, and you're actively working to improve the world and solve many, if any, of the very systemic flaws and problems. And the bad days, it's just a meat grinder that you know, nothing really matters, and we're all too small to actually have an impact. I think that. For me, it's a twofold, the two-pronged approach in a way. I think the first one is it's this quote by a book about climate justice. It's the title actually, which is, at the end of the day, all we have is each other. And it's about this feeling of community and this feeling of being a part of a community and empathy. I think empathy is the biggest driver of human goodness, of virtue, if you wish. And in many ways, social media and modern society has kind of leaned on the idea of the individual over the community to make us de-empathize, to make us think about our co-humans less and less, or even in a hostile way. So I think the first answer is put empathy and resilience in the middle. And as to the how, again, I will lean, I think, on Arturo Escobar's ideas of the pluriverse. It's less about franchising or scaling up solutions, and it's more about finding ways to create those solutions. For example, I've had the pleasure to visit and work with 3 Indian universities in Delhi. I was very hesitant to kind of paradrop into the Indian context and say, you do this, this, and that, and you're done. I really had to approach it in a very humble way and try to understand, what's India, what's what's Delhi, what's Chandigarh, what's happening, what existing ecosystems of social innovation and traditional support exist, and facilitate those actors in making the solutions to their problems, because I have no idea of those types of solutions, but I'm very eager to learn. And I think it's this idea of facilitating and this idea that Manzini always talks about, instead of using our professional design capacity, let's try to foster the growth of the diffuse design capacity that people who are experts of their lived experience have throughout the world. And I'm rambling. So if anyone else would like to ask a question or make a comment, I think this would be the best time to.
Also, well, I have also a question for anyone, which is a bit maybe similar to what Cynthia was asking. I think most of these projects are very much, or and also links to what Spirit was saying, that the role of the facilitator, but we also think that beyond enabling existing things, we also need to move towards activism and making things up and challenge the status quo. But often we activate an intervention, but how designers engage with communities can leave a long-lasting legacy from these interventions. So beyond the time frame and funding of a project, how can we ensure this long-lasting legacy? Can anybody answer? To a certain extent, Helen was saying through storytelling and passing on. Someone else maybe wants to comment on that? Because as well, in the Center for Social Innovation, there is so much discourse on the exit strategy, but I find it so, it carries with itself a sense of guilt. I hate having to exit the community. I feel an ethical responsibility when working with communities, but how do we ensure they build resilience and they can self-sustain these initiatives? Or maybe it's just too difficult to get an answer to that.
Can I speak a little bit? Okay.
Yes,
hello, everybody. We were talking the other day, Francesco, about the fireworks and the thing that everything's going well while we're working, but then when we leave, is this sustainable? This is the sustainability. This is the point of sustainability, is that when we leave, this is still works, and this would be the perfect thing. I think it's very difficult to do, yeah, and I think this should be the main aim, that when we leave, that the thing keeps going. And if anybody has an idea of how to do it, please say it.
Thanks, Cynthia. I can see that Richie has a hand up. So would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you. I think one of the things when working with communities, if you approach them with an open mind that co-designers and they are responsible to solve their problem, you are there to just facilitate and empower them with the skills which they need to move forward. It will be easy for you to exit the scene. And to exit the scene, you need to exit gradually, not that this project is a 12 months project. After 12 months, you are nowhere to be seen. Everything will just collapse. And if people are empowered enough, that I think the key thing is ownership, because from our context, what we have seen is that maybe non-governmental organizations from coming abroad or come say, no, we have this, you have this problem, we'll do this for you and do that. There's no ownership, and the community would even label that this is a UN project. It's not their project. But once you approach it in such a way that there's that ownership, then it is going to be easy for them to continue with the project. And then the exit strategy, if it is gradually, you leave maybe after a week or two, you go and check the progress. And then after that, a month, you go and check the progress. After 3 months, you check the progress. And you find that really they've continued working on what you left them doing. But in most cases, what we have seen from an African context is that the exit strategy is really horrible. People just come, project is done, they disappear. And then if something goes wrong, they don't know who to look to come for assistance. And that is not working at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. And Rita, do you have your hand up?
Yeah. Well, I think we can never be sure. There is no way to be sure that we think will last forever. It would be, well, I would be very grateful if someone had this magic thing that would make me sure that things would last forever. But I think a good way of keeping it going, I agree with Richie. It's just, like listening more than doing, and let people take ownership of whatever the project is. And I've seen from my experience, I'm a little bit older than most of you there, is that whenever, for example, a project comes from a student that belongs to the community, things keep going because the guy is, in a certain way, is still there and he knows the people and he knows, and it's different when it's an idea that comes from the lab. So usually when it's like a demand from the community that comes to us to go and to help, it usually lasts a little bit longer. And I believe that the less we can do, like, just go there and just let people talk and just, okay, and go for them, because then it's their kid. And mothers don't leave their kids. As someone was talking about women, yeah, women are like that, and we don't leave our kids alone. So if people feel that it's their own kid, they created it, it's not a project from the university, it's not someone else that come here and told me what to do, usually it's easier for it to go on. But, well, if there is a way that we can assure that, I don't know. If anyone knows, I would love to know. Please let me know.
I think it's a great question, and it's I'd love to be together with you doing this physically, but I can still see nodding heads, heads nodding in agreement, and kind of brows going like, yeah, this is a tough one. So that's a good thing, in a way. It would be better if we could just magically save the world and solve all of the problems, but it doesn't work that way. And if it did, it would probably lead to a million different unintended consequences. I've seen many Gini stories to know that's the case. But in a way, this kind of moves us on to this very last, I would say, provocation and call to action that we'd like to extend to you. I don't know if I need to share my screen. I'll just do it just for 1 second. So essentially, This book, the way we looked at it and the way that we worked at it and the way that we approached it today is a very interesting starting point. It's a snapshot of what DESIS has been doing, but it's also a springboard for what we think that DESIS is going to be doing. So we were thinking about essentially creating a new I don't know what the word is. In academics, we have a thing with titles, like, is it a special interest group? Is it a thematic area? It's, let's call it, a collection of like-minded people who are working in the same field and have the same interests, essentially. So our next step, based on this discussion and the work that we've done in the book, is to start working on essentially understanding the main themes that we talked about today and what needs to be done and new ways to move forward. So please reach out. Let's make this event the beginning. So our mails are in the screen. You probably have them already, but I think what we're trying to create is a place to have these types of conversations, to share our projects and to learn together. And in the same vein, we will be launching through DESI students. I don't know if Ingrid wants to tell some things about that. A design challenge based around design for emergencies. So please reach out, find us. And Francesco, please.
Yeah, no, that's it. As Teresa said at the beginning, there is this design student, the DESI student network, and the design for challenge is about design for emergency and how might we harness the collective power of the DESI student community to mobilize creative action to regenerate our environment. So there will be DESI's Cafe on the 17th of November, hosted by Northumbria University. So if you're interested, please attend. And overall, well, also, if we still have a few minutes and if anybody else wants to make any other comments or questions, but overall for me, today was very interesting to see also how the role of the designer is really expanding. Because it's not only about facilitating initiatives, but also making things happen and also designing new social economies. So Ezio, in fact, I know that he was very interested in today's discussion, which is also what is the role of the designer in crafting new social economies that requires new forms of organizations based on trust, relationships, and community resilience, but also this need of a middle manager to sustain these initiatives, and maybe sometimes also enabled by other digital technologies or networks of platforms. And hopefully so we can move and transition towards a sustainable future based on the values of solidarity, conviviality, and sustainability. But also there is the need for training and developing new skills, and as well, for instance, spanning from design management, service design, visualization, storytelling. We have seen so many different skills needed today, as well as new business models that are needed. And also this is contributing. For instance, there was Ida in the chat, in the audience earlier, but she's also recently edited a special issue of the Design Journal on design-driven entrepreneurship. So as well, we are seeing how design is also moving to new disciplinary areas. And we hope that the conversation today is contributing to this new and emerging field. And so that design can create, empower people, create new jobs, revitalize local economies, as well as cultural heritage, and also make a positive impact on the environment, but also redesigning policies and social dynamics, and therefore to build a more sustainable future. So I see there is so much activity in the chat. Otherwise, yes, it was very interesting and inspiring for me. And I want to thank everybody for joining. And it was really great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the most important part. I'd love, and I really have to thank all of you for being here, especially Cynthia, Amres, Helen, Keith, Ralitza, Ritzi, Luis, Marco, and Anna, who joined us through video. Everyone in the chat here, everyone on YouTube. And it's just it's really amazing to finally be able to share this book, because we've been talking about these projects and admiring your work for such a long time, and to finally share it with the world feels so amazing. And yeah, just thank you very much.
Let's stay in touch. And as well, I think this will be recorded on YouTube, so you can also watch it afterwards if you're interested, or also spread the word with others. And let's stay in touch. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco and Spiros, for bringing us together.
Thank you, Jessica, for joining.
Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.